Heart, in the financial center of Fort Worth, Texas, the routine continued its course like any other Monday. Executives with impeccable suits hurried the lobby of the skyscrapers, some checking their phones, others holding coffee cups as if over there were the answers to your problems. Between that coming and going of heels and soles hitting the marble, Jonathan Kellerman, CEO of one of the country's largest logistics companies, walked toward the elevator that would take to his office in the 18th floor. His mind was focused on the meeting of the 10 when suddenly something did stop. A voice, but not a voice. Anyone. It was a fluent, confident, perfectly articulated Mandarin. He turned the head looking for who he spoke, convinced that one of his foreign trade executives had arrived early, but what he saw, it left him baffled. Next to the lobby's digital directory, a woman, African-American, with the burgundy cleaning uniform, was holding a conversation with an Asian man who was clearly completely lost. She not only explained as get to the right floor, but toward with a warmth and confidence that made it clear that it wasn't a learned phrase, but real mastery of the language. Kellerman frowned. He frowned, trying to understand if was seeing good. He still hadn't left his astonishment. When, barely finished helping the man, the same women turned towards a couple who were arguing in Spanish on how to find the conference room. With the same fluency, switched to Spanish, smiled and guided with the same precision, Jonathan stayed paralyzed. That had no sense. Who was she? If this story, it's already surprising you, subscribe to the channel. That way we can continue bringing you stories like this that deserve to be heard. His entrepreneurial instinct does not allow to ignore it. He observed how, after attending to the couple, the woman addressed toward a cleaning cart took a rag and began to clean the screens, tactile of the directory, as if nothing had happened before. Jonathan approached, almost without think about it, and read her badge, Denise Atwater. "Excuse me," she began. He, without knowing very well good how to formulate the question, "What you just did, where did you learn?" She did looked with naturalness, without appear intimidated. "Mandarin, Spanish, or French?" she asked, with an average smile, anticipating her doubt. "I learned by living." Jonathan laughed, nervous. It wasn't the answer I was expecting. He introduced himself quickly and, after a few seconds of hesitation, asked that it be escort him to his office. She hesitated. She looked at his cleaning cart, then at him, and finally nodded. They walked silently towards the elevator. While they were going up, Jonathan kept looking at her out of the corner of his eye, trying to fit in that scene in his head. How was it possible that a woman with that mastery level in languages were working as cleaning staff? Upon arriving at the executive floor, some employees, they raised the view, surprised to see Denise there. No one the normally greeted in those hallways. They entered the CEO's office, a large space with large windows that gave a view of the entire city. Jonathan Lee offered. He sat down opposite her and asked bluntly, "I want to understand your story, Denise. How do you speak so many languages?" She breathed deep. He settled down the hair in an improvised ponytail and began, "It's not a short story, but if you want listen to it, it is tale. And if it excites you as much as it does me, hear this. Subscribe now, same. It's the only way we can continue telling inspiring stories." Denise looked a second out the window, as if searching in the horizon the strength to start. "I was born here in Fort Worth, but my life was never simple. My mom was a nurse, but when you diagnosed sclerosis multiple, so I had to leave. Everything to take care of her. I studied linguistics in the university. I dreamed with being an interpreter for Organizations International, but it was not possible. The disease moved forward quickly, and the money was not enough. So I started taking any job that would allow me to pay for medicines and accounts. First in coffee shops, then in cleaning. What I never left behind, he went to study. Whenever he could, he learned a new language. It was my way of feeling that I wasn't giving up, even though the world will think so." Jonathan the Eye listened silently, increasingly bewildered, not only by what he was saying, but by how he said. His way of articulating the words, your clarity in expressing themselves, denoted a level of education and discipline that surpassed many of the managers he had hired. "And how many languages do you speak exactly?" he asked, still incredulous. Denise looked straight to the eyes. "9, he replied without hesitation. "English, and Spanish, French, Mandarin, German, Portuguese, Arabic, Japanese, and Russian. 9, he repeated, almost in a whisper. "And you never worked in something related to that?" She denied with the head. "Nobody gave me the opportunity. My resume said cleaning, and when I arrived at an interview, I didn't get past the reception." For a moment, Jonathan felt a mixture of shame and anger. How was it possible that a woman with such talent would have been invisible to everyone? Or worse still, for him same, that the eye saw every morning without really looking at it. "And you never tried?" "I don't know. Sending your profile to companies that work with foreign trade or translation?" he asked, almost with guilt. "The eye tried," he replied, she with serenity. "But when your email says work experience, housekeeping, nor not even it open, also, I had to prioritize. My mom, my daughter, the rent. I couldn't wait for answers that never came. So, I accepted what there was, what would allow me survive, but never I stopped learning, toward in my free time, while I cleaned offices, listening to podcasts, watching online classes, practicing with whoever found it. Learning was my way of not disappearing. The silence that followed, it was heavy, but not uncomfortable." Jonathan nodded, crossed the arms, and after a few seconds bowed toward she. "Denise, I want to be completely honest. I didn't bring you here out of charity, not even because I want to make me the savior. This confronts me as a leader. I realize that I have ignored talents incredible, simply because they are in positions that, socially, we decide not to look at. What you do, what you know, is impressive. And I can't allow me to have someone like you in this building cleaning desks, when you should be in a boardroom representing this company." He looked at her eyes with absolute seriousness. "I want to offer you a position as cultural liaison for international affairs. If you accept, of course." For a moment, Denise thought she had misunderstood. She stood looking at him, blinking several sometimes, as if their brain will need process those words slowly. "An executive position," she repeated, still incredulous. "Exactly," Jonathan stated bluntly. "This position doesn't exist yet, but it should. Someone who could be the bridge between our operations in different countries, someone who understands not only the languages but also cultures, and you are that person." She breathed deep. He felt that the heart you beat so strong that he feared that it listen. "I don't know that say. I never imagined," he stammered. "Just tell me if you want." He interrupted it. "Others, we solve it together." Denise came down the look. A part of it wanted to shout yes immediately. Another, the one who had learned to distrust everything that seemed too good to be true, the forced one to be prudent. "Sir Kellerman," he said in a firmer voice. "Thank you. I swear you don't know how much this means to me. But I want to be clear. I don't want you to think I need anything handed to me. If you give me this opportunity, know that I will work, double, triple if necessary. But I don't want anyone think that I am here out of pity. I want you to value me for what I can do, not where I'm coming." Jonathan smiled, supported the elbows on the desk, and replied with total conviction, "That's exactly why I'm telling you, offering this position." The conversation dragged on almost an hour. They talked about their role, responsibilities, and the challenges and what it would entail, that radical change in her life. Denise asked everything. She didn't let pass neither a detail. "I wanted to make sure that it wasn't an error, not even for her, nor for the company." Jonathan, for his part, was more surprised with each answer than you gave. His vision of the world, your ability to analyze situations, intercultural, and their common sense far exceeded what he expected, even from executives with years of experience. When they finished, he stood up, narrow the hand and him. She said, "Welcome to the executive team, Denise." She squeezed his hand with force, trying to make sure he didn't notice how you were trembling the fingers. However, the true test was not there in that office, but in what would come after. To the tomorrow next, when Denise crossed the lobby dressed no longer with her cleaning uniform, but with a suit sober, the effect was immediate. The looks were fixed in she. Some employees pretended not to see her. Others they whispered among themselves, and a few did not hide it his bewilderment. The same people who had previously passed by him without greet her, now they watched as if it were another person. But she was not intimidated. She walked straight toward the elevator with the head high and a security that, although partly feigned, it was enough to sustain itself that first day. Upon arriving at the executive floor, the scene was not very different. Some secretaries they looked with arched eyebrows. Others executives barely concealed his discomfort. Even one of the managers, whom I had seen more than once leave his dirty cup in the break room, frowned at the sight of her. "Miss Atwater?" he asked, sounding incredulous. "What? Does you hear?" Denise, it looked with a calm smile and replied, "I work here. I am the new cultural liaison for international affairs." The face of the man was a poem. He tried to pull himself together, cleared his throat, and he nodded, clearly puzzled. That first day, it was an emotional marathon. Jonathan officially presented in the meeting of the executive committee. "Many of you already. They know Denise, although perhaps they have never been stopped to listen to her," he said, casting a subtle but firm glance at several of those present. "From today on, she will be part of this team with a key role in our international operations." The reactions were diverse, from smiles forced, even looks that clearly said, "This is a mistake." But Denise stood firm. She took the word, was presented in perfect English, then in French, and to the surprise of many, also in Mandarin, making it clear that he was not there to fill a quota, but to provide real value. The meeting advanced with certain strain in the environment. Some were trying to keep the appearances. Others did not hide his discomfort. Denise, meanwhile, took notes, listened to each intervention, and, when she was asked, gave the word, intervened with precision surgical. In one of the discussions about the expansion towards Asian markets, one of the directors began to talk about the barriers cultural as if they were an insurmountable problem. Denise interrupted, with all the respect, but also with all the security that he had cultivated throughout his life. "Sorry, but I think they are seeing the problem from the wrong perspective. Barriers, cultural, are not obstacles. They are poorly constructed bridges. Our work is learning how to build them well." The silence that followed was as uncomfortable as it is revealing. At the end of the meeting, Jonathan is approached and said in a low voice, "Perfect. Exactly what we needed, but be prepared. It won't be easy." And I had reason. Into the following hours were an avalanche of comments, some concealed, others not so much. "What does she hear? This is crazy. Serious, is the CEO hiring cleaning staff as executives?" Denise told them. "I listened to them, felt, but did not allow it to will effect." He reminded himself, same one that had survived much worse. At night, whole without sleeping, taking care of her mother, to jobs whether they treated it as if it were invisible, to years of rejection and closed doors. This was just another language I had to learn to use. In the days following this, Denise dove right in. In his new role, there was no room for error. I learned processes, studied international contracts, reviewed agreements cultural, and accompanied the foreign trade teams in meetings where, until then, no one had stopped to think about the subtleties of the language beyond a simple, literal translation. In one of those meetings, a client of origin Japanese did a seemingly innocent comment that no one other executive understood. Denise, with his knowledge not only of the language but also of the culture, he knew immediately that this was not a compliment, but a veiled criticism. He intervened tactfully. He corrected his course of the negotiation, and thanks to that, The company closed a multi-million-dollar contract that would otherwise have been lost. The news of his intervention spread quickly through the office. What at first were whispers of skepticism began to transform in looks of respect, although still wrapped in certain disbelief. "Did you know that she speaks Japanese?" one asked. "Not just Japanese, also Arabic, Russian, French," he replied. Another, "But still." Thus, some could not avoid the poisonous comment. "Yes, very clever, but she continues being the lady of the cleaning." Denise listened some of those comments in passing, and although they hurt, too, they fed him. They reminded him every day why was there and above, all to whom I had to prove them wrong. One afternoon, while I was reviewing some reports in the meeting room, one of the oldest managers, the Mr. Wallace, you were approached. His tone was condescending, almost patronizing. "Denise, don't get me wrong, but this environment, well, it's quite different from, cleaning hallways. This is another world," he said, with a smile that was not quite kind. She breathed deep, closed the folder in front of him, and looked straight to the eyes. "You're right, Mr. Wallace, it is another world, one in which apparently they believe that talent is only measured by clothes you wear or by the chair in the one you sit on. But I assure you, languages do not understand charges, and the intelligence is not washed with a uniform." Wallace blinked uncomfortably, faked a laugh, and walked away, unanswered. That was a turning point. From that point on, many they stopped seeing her as the lady of the cleaning that now sits with the bosses, and began to see her as what she really was, a professional with a capacity extraordinary. Jonathan, who was closely following his evolution, summoned his office for 2 weeks after. "I want you to lead a project," he said. "I want you to design an internal program to identify hidden talents within the company. People who, like you, have been ignored for years because they don't fit in traditional molds." Denise looked at her, surprised. "Are you asking me to change the company culture?" she asked, between serious and amused. Jonathan smiled. "Exactly. Are you in? If this part is touching you, don't leave without subscribe. That helps us so much to continue sharing messages like this." The proposal shook him inside. Never in his years of work had anyone you had given the authority not only to do his work, but to transform the manner in which the company saw its own employees. "I accept," he replied, without overthinking it. "But I'll do it my way." Jonathan nodded. "That's exactly what I want." From that day, Denise began to explore every corner of the building. I visited the warehouses, maintenance areas, kitchens, the cellars. He spoke with everyone, with the drivers, with the technicians, with the receptionists, with the security guards. Their objective was clear: to discover how many invisible talents were hidden behind uniforms that, until that moment, no one I had wanted to look. What he found, the let without words. A woman in reception that spoke 4 languages and that they were worked as a translator in his country before emigrating. A maintenance technician who had a degree in industrial engineering but had never been able to get it certified. A young man from the logistics area that, in his free time, he developed applications, mobile phones to improve operational processes. Bright, capable people with impressive skills were relegated to operational tasks simply because they had not had the opportunity or resources to enter through the correct door. Denise understood, with each story she heard, that her case was no exception. It was the tip of an iceberg that was carrying years, floating invisible to the eyes of all. In the following weeks, he put together a detailed report that he presented in the board of directors. Each sheet was full of data, names, stories, and above all, evidence that the company was wasting an invaluable human talent. "Gentlemen," Denise began in a firm voice, "what we have, this isn't a resource issue, it's a vision issue. We've been looking for talent outside, spending millions in international recruitment. while there are people here with extraordinary abilities that we have systematically ignored. Presentation included concrete cases, economic impact graphs, and clear proposals to create an internal development program. The reaction was mixed. Some managers that they applauded with enthusiasm, others were tense, crossing their arms and avoiding eye contact. "We can't just give it key positions to people without university degrees," said one of the human resources managers, visibly uncomfortable. "What they will say, our partners," Denise looked with serenity, "they will say that we are a company that believes in real talent. They'll say we're a company that understands that degrees are important, yes, but we do enter everything. And if that's a problem for some, then the problem is not in us, but in them." Jonathan, sitting in the back, smiled silently, knowing that he had taken the better decision of his life by hiring her. Little by little, the resistances began to give way. The first in support her were precisely those who had once been ignored, the rank-and-file employees, the operatives, those who were rarely invited to the important meetings. Seeing Denise there, at the front, leading such a profound change, gave hope. Some began to register in the internal courses that he proposed others to share their hidden skills, such as programming, graphic design, project management, or even knowledge in foreign trade. The environment in the company began to transform. What was once hallways full of silent hierarchies, they became in spaces where, for the first time, everyone began to see each other as equals. But like any change, it was not without conflict. A group of managers, upset with the new policy, began to pressure Jonathan to stop the program. "This is blurring the company's structure," they said. "We are losing seriousness towards our clients." Jonathan, who used to be a diplomatic man, that time he did not hold back. "What we are losing, gentlemen, is the arrogance," he replied. "And that is exactly what we need to lose. If anyone disagrees, the door is open. I don't plan on running a company that measures the value of people by the clothes they wear or the diploma that hangs in his wall." Some stayed in silence. Others they understood, at that moment, that change was not optional. The impact of the program was so large that in less than 6 months, several employees who previously held operational roles were promoted to administrative, coordination, and even management positions. And it was not a symbolic act. Each one demonstrated with results that, when they are gave the opportunity, they could exceed expectations, provide innovative solutions, and transform processes that were taking years operating by pure inertia. The company, which until then was recognized only for its logistical efficiency, began to be mentioned in media such as the example of inclusion, innovation, and human development. International clients were shown impressed to see how a management model so generated not only financial results, but also a positive social impact. Denise, meanwhile, became a reference inside and outside the company. She was invited to conferences, universities, and business forums to share her experience. "I'm not here because someone gave me nothing," he said every time he took a microphone. "I am here because someone had the courage to look beyond a uniform and understand that talent does not have appearance, has no gender, has no skin color, neither social class." His speech resonated with strength, especially in young people who, like her, once upon a time, they thought that opportunities were not for them. History gradually became a seed planted in hundreds of people who were beginning to believe that it was possible. However, it wasn't all applause and recognition. On more than one occasion, Denise faced comments loaded with prejudice disguised as concern. "No offense, but maybe this is all a bit too fast," he said, released a senior executive in a meeting. "Not everyone is ready for this kind of changes." She did it, looked, breathed deep, and answered with the same calm that he had learned to cultivate. "If we wait until everyone is ready, we're never going to change anything. Change doesn't ask for anything, permission. It is done. And those who are not ready, they will have to adapt or be left behind." Those words not only closed the discussion, but also they made it clear that Denise did not intend to give any a step back. And if you feel that this message it's also for you, support us by subscribing to the channel. This way we will continue to reach more people than need. In parallel, his personal life was also changing. Daughter, who had grown seeing her go out early in the morning with the cleaning uniform, now the eye saw presentations being prepared in PowerPoint, attend meetings international, and answer emails in 4 languages at the same time. Mum, so yes, it is possible, he asked one night while they did the homework. Denise, looked at him, caressed the cheek, and with a smile that mingled pride and tenderness, he replied, "You can, daughter. You always can. It's just that sometimes you have to fight twice as hard to prove it." That conversation, simple but powerful, remained recorded in both forever. One morning, while I drank coffee in the executive room, one of the new employees, a young man who used to work in the parcel area, "You are approached visibly nervous." "Madam Atwater," he began, hesitating. "I just wanted, give it the thank you. Thank you for opening this door, because before you, no one could see us." Denise smiled, put the hand in his shoulder and he replied, "You opened your own door. I just made them others would realize that he was there." That moment filled with a different pride, deeper than any promotion, than any external applause, because he understood that his struggle was no longer his alone. There was sown a change that was going far beyond its own history. With time, the company implemented a permanent system for detecting internal talent, accompanied by scholarships, training programs, and mentoring. The model was so successful that others companies, they began to replicate it. What began as an act of justice towards a single person ended up transforming the business culture of an entire region. And although the challenges followed existing, because always there would be who resisted the change, the base already was built. Denise had not only demonstrated that talent has no uniform, she had made it clear that companies cannot give luxury of wasting your people because of prejudice, blindness, or convenience. One day, in an interview for a business magazine, they asked, "Denise, what is the most difficult part of this whole process?" She did not hesitate, neither a second to respond. "Convince people that what they see does not define what we are, that a uniform does not measure the intelligence, which accent does not measure the capacity, and that the story of each person weighs more than any diploma in the wall." The more difficult it is to fight against the silent prejudices, those that no one says out loud, but that condition every decision, every look, and every opportunity. Response went viral. Thousands of people shared, that they applauded, and they cited as an example of resilience and overcoming. Despite the recognition, Denise never allowed that "you make me lose focus." Every morning continued arriving early, walking through the themselves corridors where years ago you could barely directed the word. Only now people stopped, greeted her, listened, many with "I respect" genuine, others still with certain discomfort. But she didn't need the approval of all. His mission was not to be accepted, but to open doors. If I managed, used to say, "It's not because I was smarter than others. It's because, despite everything, I never let anyone convince me that I was worth less. And if I didn't give up, you neither should do it." The conferences, interviews, and recognitions were never the target, but they became into a powerful tool. Every time he climbed onto a stage, I saw in the first rows to young people, women, migrants, cleaning staff, security, maintenance, all with the eyes shining, listening to every word like someone hear a promise. "You are not here by chance," he said. "They are here because they know, in his background, which deserve more, that their value does not depend on what others see, but of what they know. They are capable of doing, and if no one them opens the door, then tear it down." Meanwhile, within the company, the cultural change continued, consolidating. Jonathan, who once thought that leadership was just a matter of numbers and strategies, now understood that the true leadership was beginning in looking at people, not positions. Denise taught me more about human management in a year than all the leadership courses I took in my life, he confessed in more than one meeting. The Indian respect he felt for her was absolute. He no longer not as an extraordinary case, but as the proof living that talent exists in everywhere. You just have to know how to look. With the time, what began as a decision brave became an official company policy. No more selection processes based only in titles or formal experiences. Now they were valued the real skills, the knowledge acquired in life, the resilience and ability to learn. Promotions were no longer privilege of those who had borne in the correct circumstances, but of those who demonstrated day after day its value. And although not all of them changes were easy, the profitability, the productivity and organizational climate improved like never before. What many they feared it was madness, progressive, ended becoming in the better business strategy of the history of the company. One day anyone, as Denise walked through the lobby, the same place where it all began, crossed with a group of employees new, ones that were being guided in her first tour. One of them, recognizing her, approached and he asked, "Is it true that you began working here, cleaning?" She smiled, looked with the same warmth with the one who had attended to that one man lost years ago and replied, "Yes, and what that taught me is worth more than any master's degree." Looked fixed and added, "Remember this, never let where you start define how far you go, can arrive." That day, while, as she got into the elevator, Denise allowed herself a longer smile than usual. She looked at her reflection in the steel doors, not like the woman who once was invisible, but as someone who knew how to transform every obstacle into a ladder. He knew that his history was much more than a tale of personal growth. It was the living proof that when talent finds opportunity, though I arrived late, although arrives in the least expected way, is capable of breaking any roof to knock down any wall. And while the elevator doors were closing, he thought in his daughter, in his mother, and all the people who were ever treated as if they were worthless enough. Because now, thanks to her, they knew that they were worth it, and that no one ever again could convince them of what contrary. If you stayed this far, it proves that this story, it was worth it, the pain. Subscribe, comment, and share. This way, we can continue giving a voice to those who deserve to be heard.